Tonight, the push for another stimulus bill.
We've said the number one issue is we have to fix the technical fix on enhanced unemployment. We're going to make sure that we don't pay people more money to stay home than go to work.
What the plan could include and when the legislation might pass. And
no, and I don't agree with the statement that if everybody wear a mask, everything disappears.
How President Trump is now dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. Plus,
the National Security Division have charged 2 Chinese hackers.
How hackers are targeting COVID-19 research and what the United States is doing in response. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A $1 trillion deal in the works on Capitol Hill. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, tonight, lawmakers are feverishly trying to iron out details for another round of coronavirus relief. Democrats want that soon-to-expire extra $600 unemployment aid to be extended. Republicans say it's keeping people from returning to work. CBN News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy has been following the story. Ben, what do we know so far about the focus of this latest bill?
Well, John, we know that kids, jobs, and healthcare will be the focus of what could be the last round of COVID-19 relief packages. This as Congress faces pressure to act fast.
This crisis is far from over.
With cases on the rise, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell announced more than $100 billion for schools in the next relief bill.
This majority is preparing legislation that will send $105 billion so that educators have the resources they need to safely reopen. That is more money than the House Democrats set aside for a similar fund.
Other potential elements include another round of $1,200 payments going directly to Americans, a 5-year liability shield for COVID-19 related lawsuits, money for targeted virus testing and tracing, and the payroll tax cut.
The payroll tax in particular goes to some of our hardest working Americans. The people that it benefits, if you look at the tax structure, are middle income and low income workers.
Democrats want the additional $600 per week in unemployment benefits to continue rather than expiring at the end of July.
We've said the number one issue is we have to fix the technical fix on enhanced unemployment. We're going to make sure that we don't pay people more money to stay home than go to work.
Our country faces the greatest health threat in 100 years.
In a letter to Senate Democrats, Minority Leader Charles Schumer wrote, "Unfortunately, by all accounts, the Senate Republicans are drafting legislation that comes up short in a number of vital areas, such as extending unemployment benefits or funding for rental assistance, hazard premium pay for frontline workers, or investing in communities of color being ravaged by the virus, and many other necessary provisions."
This is going to be a major point of contention in the next couple of weeks as Donald Trump starts negotiating with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi on this Phase 4 deal.
Now today, former Vice President Joe Biden released more details about his economic recovery plan, which would boost the nation's workforce of caregivers and early childhood educators. It would even lock down upwards of $8,000 in tax credits for low-income and middle-income Americans to kind of offset affordable caregiving. But back to that relief package we've been discussing, being talked about on Capitol Hill, Mnuchin says he hopes to have it done and complete by the end of the month. And by all account, that's next week for lawmakers to really try and hash out a deal. John?
All right, CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy. Thanks, Ben. Well, joining me now is Mark Hamrick, senior economic analyst and Washington bureau chief at Bankrate. Mark, it's always great to have you.
My pleasure, John. Thank you.
Well, first off, how important is this next stimulus bill Congress is debating? In your opinion, will the economy survive without it?
Well, the economy will survive. The question is, will it begin to thrive more quickly if further relief legislation is passed? And the answer is yes. So the financial markets are counting on it. I would say unemployed and employed Americans are counting on it. And I think members of Congress who mostly want to be returning to their jobs on Capitol Hill after this election are mindful that this would pretty much be a big fail if they don't pass the legislation. I think that's something that members of both parties can agree on.
Mark, among the many considerations, Congress is debating whether to extend that $600 unemployment benefit from the previous relief tranche. Some argue that extra money discourages people from going back to work. Others say without it, employees will be forced to go back to unsafe jobs or won't be able to find work in this severe recession. From your vantage point, which is it?
I don't know that it's one or the other, but I don't think it probably will make its way into the final legislation that wins passage. What I do think a way around that is simply to do what the last measure provided, and that is to provide economic stimulus payments essentially to all adults and perhaps high school age individuals. The reality is that we have to do something to help the economy. It's experiencing the worst downturn since the Great Depression. And if there's some inefficiency attached to that, which no doubt there is, that's going to be the price to getting the economy back on its feet again.
As Ben Kennedy just announced in his report expanding on his Build Back Better economic plan last week, former Vice President and Trump 2020 White House rival Joe Biden today unveiled what his campaign dubbed the caregiving plan, proposing new tax credits for people who care for children, seniors, and disabled people. How important is a credit like that when it comes to rebuilding the economy?
Well, I don't want to comment on the Biden proposal itself simply because I haven't had a chance to review it. But here is a fact. Number one, if you are a family now having to take care of a child who will not be going back to school or wasn't attending school before, that's a huge problem. That's keeping people at home who could otherwise be working. So this is going to be a challenge in the fall when not all the schools are going to open. The U.S. is alone among major industrialized democracies in failing to have a parental leave policy or program that can help people both work and raise families and stay employed. So solutions along those lines, by the way, something the president himself has included in the State of the Union address, is something that I think members of Congress should be looking at. And if Joe Biden's part of that solution, so be it.
All right, Mark Hamrick with Bankrate, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
Well, in addition to the economic impact, America has a growing public health problem with an increasing death rate and case numbers still trending in the wrong direction in many states. Given the grave situation, President Trump is changing his approach. Faith Nation anchor Jenna Browder has that story.
That's right, John. Along with resuming the regular COVID briefings, the president appears to be changing his stance on face masks. After not wearing one for several months himself in public, he put out a photo on Twitter, tweeting, "Many people say that it is patriotic to wear a face mask when you can't socially distance. There is nobody more patriotic than me." White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany fielding questions about it today.
Why the mixed messaging on this critical health issue that his own top health officials have said is critical to fighting this pandemic?
The president's always been consistent on this, that masks, according to the CDC, are recommended but not required. He has said that he would wear one in the case he couldn't appropriately socially distance. And he wore one and put up the picture on Twitter, as you saw.
The president's new approach comes as COVID-19 numbers continue to surge in at least 40 states. Hospitalizations are also on the rise, with 39 states reporting an increase, and some hospitals at capacity. There is a glimmer of hope, though. Health officials say they're cautiously optimistic about several vaccines.
By the end of 2020, we will have 1, 2, or maybe 3 vaccines that have been proven safe and effective.
A new study published in The Lancet finds an experimental Oxford vaccine appears to be safe and activates the immune system to respond to the virus. The U.S. government investing $1.2 billion in the vaccine developed by AstraZeneca, ordering 300 million doses. And right now, the Oxford vaccine is in phase 3 of trials and on track to be the first to be widely produced. Right now, 23 other vaccines are in the human testing phase. John?
All right. Thank you, Jenna. CBN News chief political analyst David Brody joins us now. David, with the wrong trend in coronavirus numbers, with the president tweeting that photo of him wearing a face mask, it is hard to imagine the coronavirus not being the #1 issue in this presidential election.
John, I want to tell you something right now. I'm going to surprise you. I don't think it's the #1 issue. I know. You're sitting down. That's how you anchor, I believe. But no, it's not the #1 issue. I'm going to explain why here in a moment. The #1 issue, John, is the culture and direction of America. I don't think there's any question about it. Look, Joe Biden says he wants to restore the soul of the nation. He's been saying that from the very beginning. That's why he's running. Donald Trump has pushed the envelope. He has basically upended all of the conventional norms. So he's trying to preserve the soul of the nation. And what I mean by that is the freedom, the underpinnings in America. We're seeing the rioters and the looters. He's using law and order to try and preserve and protect the soul of the nation. So I believe the number one issue in this election is, are you done with Trump? Is it just been too much? Do you want to restore the soul of the nation? Or do you want to see a president take on the far left and say, look, we've got to kind of come back to what America was founded on to begin with in this country, and not let the far left do more damage than they want to do, and fundamentally change this country into their Marxist viewpoint. Look, that's the choice between both sides, John. As for coronavirus, of course, it's a huge issue, and it's playing out as we go. And Donald Trump, this president, will be judged on his response for sure. But the larger macro issue, I think, is all about restoring the soul of the nation or preserving and protecting it.
Somewhat along those lines, the majority of the country has also coalesced around the idea of promoting racial justice. How's that going to factor into the election?
Well, right. I mean, Joe Biden's campaign believes they can pick up young millennials and suburban evangelical women. I say suburban evangelical women in the suburbs. I guess that's redundant. But the point is, that's where they think they can make some hay. And I talked to Jim Wallace, a liberal evangelical scholar, the CEO of Sojourners. We know him. He's been around for a while. And he had a challenge to white Christians who are voting for Donald Trump. Here's what he said.
I do believe, given this president's behavior and policies over these last 4 years, I think if white Christians end up voting for him in a majority, it's going to just break our relationship with the black body of Christ for a very long time. We've seen too much, we've heard too much, and does that mean the other side's perfect? Hardly. Does that mean we agree with everything on any side? I've never agreed. I don't even endorse candidates. I advise anybody who wants, but I think it's a referendum on race and faith. So for me, that voting booth it isn't just electoral this time, it's confessional. We're walking in there and it's you and God.
John, Jim Wallace told me that racism is the single most important faith issue in this 2020 election. Not judges, not abortion, not a lot of different religious freedom, racism. That gets to my earlier point about the soul of the nation. Back to you.
Certainly a pressing issue in the moment. David Brody, thank you so much for your insights today. New concerns over election security and foreign interference. That story when we return.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Welcome back. New concern tonight over election security ahead of November's presidential vote. In a letter to FBI Director Chris Wray, top Democratic leaders say they are, quote, gravely concerned that Congress is the target of a foreign interference campaign, which seeks to, quote, amplify disinformation in order to influence congressional activity, public debate, and the presidential election. The letter does not cite specific threats, but Democratic leaders are asking the FBI to brief the House and Senate on the issue before the August recess. Well, tonight, new accusations of Chinese hacking here in the United States and around the world, this time targeting companies working on a coronavirus vaccine. Eric Phillips has been following the story, and he joins us now. Eric, the Justice Department announced new action against the alleged hackers. What are we looking at here?
Well, John, a grand jury returned an 11-count indictment against 2 hackers who have apparently been operating for more than a decade. And while much of what they did is concerning, to say the least, the red flags went up when there was concern that these 2 have been hacking into companies and research firms that were trying to develop COVID vaccines.
The 2 men named Li and Dong are now among the FBI's most wanted. Authorities say the Chinese residents, trained in computer applications technologies, have hacked hundreds of private and government systems worldwide,
including COVID-19 related treatment, testing, and vaccines.
Officials rattled off case after case where they say the men had attempted to breach companies involved in vaccine development.
They were doing reconnaissance in a Massachusetts firm involved in COVID vaccine research. Likewise, they did the same for a Maryland firm involved in biotech research.
Officials say the hacking is twofold: for the men's own financial benefit and to help the Chinese Communist Party. The investigation revealing 2 important trends.
China is using cyber intrusions as part of its rob, replicate, and replace strategy to technological development. China is providing a safe haven for criminal hackers who, as in this case, are hacking in part for their own personal gain, but willing to help the state.
The hacking was first discovered on Department of Energy computers in Washington state. Authorities say the investigation took such a long time because the men covered their steps well. After discovering hundreds of millions of dollars stolen in trade secrets and intellectual property, the FBI sent a strong message.
We're bringing these charges today to put the Chinese leaders directing these cyber attacks on notice. There are serious consequences and risks for stealing our technological and our intellectual property.
The 2 men are each charged with 11 crimes and, if convicted, could spend 50 years or more behind bars. And, John, I should mention that authorities don't believe the men were successful in obtaining even any COVID research secrets in terms of a vaccine, though they strongly believe they were definitely after them.
All right, thank you, Eric. Coming up, shining the light on the fight for religious freedom around the world and how it's bringing new hope for people of faith in one African nation.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Welcome back. Imagine living in a country where if you converted to a different faith, it could lead to a death sentence. That's not a stretch of the imagination for people in the North African nation of Sudan. It was almost a reality until the government scrapped a controversial law for Muslims. George Thomas discussed Sudan's future of human rights in a conversation with the vice chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom.
If a Muslim living in Sudan decided to abandon his or her faith or convert to another religion, for example, like Christianity, this person would be stoned. You know, for nearly 30 years, Sudan's apostasy law, based on strict Islamic Sharia law, condemned to death anyone found guilty of violating the law. But now, in a dramatic reversal, the overwhelming Muslim nation in Africa has decided to scrap the death penalty and introduce a host of political reforms that experts hope will improve the lives of the Sudanese people, especially women and minority faith groups. The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom has welcomed steps taken by Sudan's interim government, calling the legislative reforms, quote, significant and historic. USCIRF's Vice Chair Anurima Bhargava joins me now for more. It's great to have you on the broadcast. You know, Sudan was one of 12 countries in the world punishing apostasy by death. Not anymore. How significant is this?
It's extraordinarily significant because I think in so many ways what we've seen in Sudan, which was after 30 years of rule by an Islamist regime in protests that brought down that government, we are now seeing massive reforms across the country, including this most recent move to make sure that apostasy is no longer something that would be punishable by death. And I think for the Commission and for many around the world, Sudan is a place that we can now look to see how it is that we can move from extraordinarily restrictive regimes, particularly for women, that to a place where there is much more belonging for people of all religious faiths and where religious freedom can thrive.
I remember covering the conflict in Sudan, whether it was with Darfur or between the North and the South for many, many years, and to see an overwhelmingly Muslim nation to take such a step in terms of reform and reforming aspects of its Islamic penal code is quite significant. I'm curious, the amendment, I'm sure, is good news for Sudan's non-Muslim community, right?
It's good news for the non-Muslim community. Actually, since a joint civilian military government came into place in August of last year, we've seen a number of reforms. We've seen everything from Christmas being declared a national holiday. We've seen the disbanding of church councils that had been used to intimidate churches and their practices. We've seen, a Coptic woman who was actually part of one of the most senior councils in Sudan, and we've seen this most recent round of reforms, which include the banning of female genital mutilation, include efforts to try and make sure that laws that said that Muslims could not drink alcohol. Those are all things that have actually benefited not only the Christian communities that have long been persecuted in Sudan, but Muslim communities as well, and the Guardianship Law. And that was a law that required women to get a permit from a male guardian to be able to travel abroad. Those are all part of this most recent round of reforms that includes the changes to the apostasy law.
Absolutely. Yeah. A new dawn in the nation of Sudan. Thank you so much for coming on the broadcast.
Coming up, the first daughter putting the needs of others first. We explain when Faith Nation returns.
Region's first ROTC graduate student.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Finally tonight, a prominent member of the First Family and White House staff spent time serving some hit hard by the pandemic in the nation's capital. Ivanka Trump volunteered Monday at the faith-based D.C. Dream Center, helping load fresh produce, milk, and meat into 500 boxes for underserved communities impacted by COVID-19. Trump joined city and church leaders, including Pastor Paula White.
The families have never received this quality of food, and if you could see the smiles, the tears, the testimonies, it makes a world of difference.
The Farmers to Family Food Box program announced it distributed 40 million boxes to families affected by the pandemic. Well, that does it for tonight's Faith Nation. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you right back here tomorrow.